you would like to support the podcast and get some extra content while you're there, head on over to patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast and sign up. From the rewatch to the Q&A, we will have loads of content every week. So sign up, patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast. And now, here's the podcast. Welcome everybody. It's episode 404 of the SevereMMA podcast. My name is Sean Sheehan, joined today by the Casemiro of Irish MMA media, Graeme McDonald. As we talk about a massive week in the world of mixed martial arts, we're going to kick it off today to talk about, you guessed it, Bellator Dublin. We were just there at the weekend. But we have some other stuff to talk about as well. Some big fights coming up next weekend. We're going to look at it, all of that. But before we get into all of it, let us tell you that this episode of the podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Manscaped. And you know everything that's good over at manscaped.com at this stage. If you're in the US and Canada, they have the beard hedger now. Check out manscaped.com for the performance package 4.0 as well if you are in Europe and the UK and all of that. So absolutely brilliant stuff for you over there. As you said, that's right, they have beard products now. The leader in grooming are revolutionizing the men's hygiene game once again with that Beard Hedger Pro kit. It all starts with the Beard Hedger. It's a cordless trimmer. There's a rotary wheel with 20 hair cutting lengths, all with one guard. So no more messy drawers full of old tack, you know, all little bit of add-ons and stuff like that. No bullshit like that. All 20 different lengths, all on one guard. It's the best kit you'll ever get. Absolutely brilliant. You can sculpt yourself, be absolutely precise in the beard. It'll be brilliant. You can save 20% as well though. 20% off and free shipping by going to manscaped.com and using our promo code SevereMMA. So that Beard Hedger Pro Kit is ultimate tool to get the perfect look. 7 million men worldwide already use Manscaped their balls. It's time to trust them with your hair up top too. With this new kit, take a grooming routine to the next level. It all starts with the Beard Hedger. The electric beard hair trimmer is a premium beard sculpting machine. As I mentioned, one guard, leaving little mess. It's also waterproof. You can shave in the shower to avoid all the hair in the sink or the bathroom floor. Plus, the titanium coated T-blade is tough on hair but smooth on your face. It's absolutely the perfect package, the Beard Hedger Pro Kit, and it doesn't end with just the Beard Hedger. It also has 4 dermatologically tested formulations. First of all, the shampoo and conditioner. Your hair is different on your beard than it is in your head, and I've noticed that as well recently. It's so much better when you get the beard shampoo and the beard conditioner. Just makes it a lot better, you know, reduce ingrown hairs, replace natural oils and promote beard health as well. And they also, Manscaped, have the beard oil. That's number 3 of the 4 here, as well as the beard balm. The beard oil, first of all, if you have a little bit of a brittle and dry beard, the oil relieves dryness but on the beard and the skin beneath it, while adding a little shimmer and shine as well. It looks extra fine. Cap it off with the beard balm, as I mentioned, a pomade, the shapes, styles, moisturizes and tames for the sculpted look. There's also 3 free gifts with the Beard Hedger Pro Kit: a beard brush, comb and scissors to ensure you have the perfect tools for the perfect beard. From first impression to last, you love it, and everyone will see your improved facial hair game too. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code SevereMMA at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. The Beard Hedger, 1 stroke, 1 guard, 20 lengths. You'll absolutely love it. Promo code SevereMMA, manscaped.com, 20% off plus free shipping. Right, Graeme, let's get straight into it. So let's talk about Bellator Dublin, another week. I suppose, I don't know, is it good, bad, indifferent? It was an interesting week though in the world of Irish mixed martial arts. A long week. I was up there on Thursday, Friday and Saturday. Obviously Thursday for the media day, Friday for the weigh-ins and Saturday for the fight night itself. Like I suppose before we get into the fights and all of that, I think the landscape maybe for like covering MMA in Ireland has really changed. Thankfully, this time Abby from MMA Junkie was over covering it as well, so I was going to have another face there, but it was basically just myself and Andy. There was another person there. I'm not sure who they were with. I think they might have been with the promotion or something, not too sure, but that was it, and there was no one else there covering it, which is grand and all, but it's I suppose we've discussed this before, it's a far cry from where it used to be in terms of a lot of people around covering MMA and wanting to be at media days and everything like that. So it's interesting. And press row actually on the night as well, which is usually a little bit different. Now usually people are just turning up for their free ticket basically. There was a lot less this time as well. Now maybe that's down to the card, and we've talked about that obviously last week, the card and that being amazing and all, but that's just kind of the landscape we have at the moment in terms of the media landscape. The media day itself, though, I thought it was actually pretty good, to be honest. I thought, you don't have that big star in terms of, James Gallagher that's going to talk a lot, or, Leah maybe in the fight that's going to, get her towards the title. You had Sinead in that as well, but, Sinead's a little bit quieter and all that. And Quealy was he wasn't in the big fight this time. He was a little bit off form. He wasn't that up for it and stuff. He was just trying to get out of there, which, I 100% understand and all that. But I thought the Amosov stuff was very good. Obviously, very touching, the stuff he was saying. I thought Brian Moore was very good. I thought Harding was good. Sinead was good in her way too. And Kieran Clark was good. So it was a good media day, to be fair. But, it didn't maybe have that star that people like are 100% tuned in for, like, no matter what they say, whether it's even James or whoever it might be. Dwayne's then went off basically without a hitch. Kieran Clark's opponent, Leonardo Sinis, came in and he missed weight, but he looked bad as well walking out. Yeah, he looked really, really bad. But he took it on short notice, and you can understand him maybe struggling to make weight. Mike Mazzulli, fair play to him, like, he immediately said, "Stop! You're not cutting no more weight." Sinis was trying to take off like his underwear to make weight on him. Mazzulli stopped him and met Kieran Clark outside, and he's like, "I'm taking the fight." He basically didn't care. Like, to be honest, he was like, he tried. You can see he killed himself to get down. I have no problem with that. He wasn't like a guy who went in there and didn't try to make the way that Kieran was saying. He's like, no problem, and there was no second thoughts even for him about taking the fight. So
yeah, I think Kieran was just grateful to have an opponent after your opponent falls out during the week. Like, you're just happy that Sinis is there, and as you said, Clark said, it wasn't a case of he just didn't bother trying to make weight. He literally looked like death walking out. So in fairness to him, I don't think it was unprofessionalism. It was just a late call up and a big wake up by the looks of things. And fair play to Kieran, obviously taking the fight, but I think that was always going to happen.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, he, as you said, last two opponents fell out last two times. When I spoke to him, he was on about that as well, that, like, he's fought in the IMAS before, and he's fought lads that he's never even seen, and Sinis, it was hard to get coverage of him anyway, so I probably didn't know too much about him, so that, he was always taking that fight. So yeah, that was kind of it.
That's actually something we don't really talk about the IMAS and things like that, where, in MMA, especially outside of the UFC and even in the UFC, there's a lot of fallouts and late changes. So it's good to have that experience of kind of going in there against the unknown and in the IMAS as an amateur, kind of in your locker to fall back on when this does happen.
Yeah, 100%. I actually never. I thought about it a little bit before when we were talking about fighting even guys like on the Irish national championships and preparing for the IMAS, but I never thought about it with that preparing for pro when guys pull out, until Kieran Clark said it. I was like, yeah, Jesus, that actually makes a lot of sense. That we hear guys all the time saying, I'm preparing for myself and not thinking about my opponent. But you actually have to do that in some ways, because you never know if it's going to be the fucking same opponent or not, especially on the way up. Like let's say if you're Amosov or you're a champion in some weight class, it's a little bit different. But if you're someone, like Kieran Clark on the way up, or anyone from, Kieran Clark down on the card, basically, your opponent can change in a second, and it's liable to do that. So to kind of have that experience of having done that before, it's not going to be a shock to the system. It's good to have that, and fought a load of different styles as well. It's also good to have that there. So yeah, that was I thought that was a big takeaway from the first couple of days there, and it was great. It was great to see everyone again. A lot of people around. There was even a few fans around the hotel and stuff, maybe more than usual. And Robbie Lawler was knocking around, and Eugene Behrman was knocking around and stuff. So there was a few of the stars of MMA around the place as well. So it was was great to see, you know, as I said, I mentioned Abby talking to him, and Andrew McGahan was around, and you know, even chatting to kind of the Big John and a few of the judges and the refs and stuff as well. It's always great to do that and be at a Bellator fight week, and I'm sure it'll be the same for the other ones as well. But tiring, Graeme.
Yeah, it's mad though. It's, you know, you used to see people like Abby and all those every few months, and I was talking to Abby at the media day and at the fight night, and I don't think I'd seen him in about 5 years. So, you know, it's a bit mad how quickly time goes by, but also how, you know, our kind of routine of going over to, you know, fight nights in the UK and in Europe has kind of changed. I suppose a lot of that is, you know, no Irish interest on the cards and things like that, or well, usually no Irish interest in the card. We'll talk about Ian Garry later and maybe where they should place him and stuff like that. But yeah, the landscape, as you said, has definitely massively changed.
Yeah, I think, look, the pandemic is definitely a thing about it as well. It got a lot of people out of him. But Abby was even saying it to me as well. It's like, Jesus, I remember coming here and the place to be packed, or I'd be meeting this person. And now, you know, none of them are covering him anymore, or, you know, the game kind of eats people up and spits them out an awful lot, and that's unfortunate. But that's but inside the cage and the people outside of the cage covering it as well. It just, MMA seems to be one of.
I suppose the pandemic is a good point, because people like with working from home in normal jobs, people got used to that and seeing that you can do it that way, and you know, you can cover UFC events and Bellator and Cage Warriors and all these events at home pretty much the same as you can, bar like, you know, the in-person interviews afterwards, getting a few questions in or whatever. That's basically, you know, nearly the only difference. So I suppose the pandemic made people see that, like, I don't actually need to spend this money to go and to these events. I can just cover from home, and it's basically, you know, kind of the same outcome.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people who are actually like covering MMA like as a job, like I am now as well, it's actually very hard to get away for like 3 days to cover it, because you've other work to do and stuff as well, and you're fucking rushing it, and it's, you know, it's really not that easy when you have stuff to get in, you know, have filed on time, and to get, you know, for the week before and the week after. MMA moves so quickly, it's actually tough. So I understand it a lot, but it's weird that, you know, and we've mentioned this before, so I won't go at it again, but like there's almost no like up and coming Irish media at the moment, like that's turning up to these media days and clawing at it to get there. Like there's literally, I said that's one person, I'm not sure who they were, but like other than that, there was no one there. There's absolutely no one there. So anyway, it's a bit, I suppose it's a little bit disappointing, but it's understandable as well. But anyway, we'll get into the fights and we'll talk about them. We'll start at the undercard and I suppose work our way up, because I want to talk a good bit about the top fights, and maybe we can run through the undercard a little bit quicker. Stephen Hill went in there and he looked impressive. He got a good win, moving to 7-0 against Joel Cueja. He got the rear naked choke in the second round of that fight, I believe. Very close second fight in, Dmitry Hitchenko against Daniele Scatizzi. Now keep in mind as well, I haven't got a chance to watch these back yet, Graeme. I don't know if you have, but we were sitting cage side watching these, so you know, I would definitely not take my view 100% on the judging. We might have a few other points to make on a few of the things that happened, but from my point of view, sitting cage side, I thought the Scatizzi Hitchenko fight, I thought Dmitry won the third round, and I thought the first two were very, very close. You know, and even John Kavanagh came up afterwards and I kind of said the same thing to him. I think everyone thought it was a little bit close. I think maybe a lot of the SPG crowd maybe thought that Scatizzi had won it, and I wouldn't disagree with that in terms of a 29-28. I think it could have gone either way, but as I said, I haven't been able to go through with a fine-tooth comb on watching it cage side. But you know what, I thought the first few fights, the levels were actually very good, and Kenny came in the next fight. But you know, I think Andy was saying it the other day, maybe the most impressive performance, most impressive dominating performance. Okay, his opponent wasn't maybe as higher level as some of the others, Craig McIntosh going on to 3-5 now, but Kenny looked very, very good there, and I thought the level of those first few fights was pretty good. Any views on the Scatizzi fight, Graeme? And Kenny looked good as well, didn't he?
Yeah, I agree with you. The first two rounds were close. I think what was the first round, I was kind of saying to you, like you could have went either way, and we were kind of saying that after the second as well. So, you know, it might feel a bit unfortunate to come out on the wrong side of that decision, but I think probably it was the right decision just about. One thing I'd say about Scatizzi, I'd recommend he comes out to Scatman by Scatman John instead of whatever song he's coming out to, just to, you know, get the crowd going, get the crowd on his side, and get a bit of banter going. And it's obviously hilarious song as well. It suits his name, and he doesn't have another walkout that's like, you know, that he'd be replacing that you'd be missing out on. So yeah, that could be something he looks at. But yeah, in terms of the actual fight, yeah, I think there was just a couple of big shots in each round, or a couple of decent shots that kind of snapped his head back a little bit, or stiff enough shots that probably just edged the rounds. But as you say, when you're cage side and there's a lot going on, and you're trying to, do other things as well, like on terms of the website and videos and stuff like that, it's hard to, watch that carefully, and sometimes you get blocked, and the screen to the left of us wasn't showing the fights, so it was showing like a big picture of each fighter and just a promo picture basically on the big screen, and the screen that we could look at was kind of really high and far behind us, so it was kind of hard sometimes when the view was obstructed to see what was going on in some of these fights. I always,
and I've said this before, but I always think, about MMA decisions, and when people cage side are putting in their scores, the media, I'm always thinking like those are probably the worst scores you can get. Like genuinely, there's no worse person to score it than the media cage side. And I include myself and you in that as well last Saturday night. Like it's an impossible task, because as you said, going in and out, but looking down at your laptop, taking notes. We don't have monitors in front of us. We don't have a clear view at the cage. It's a very, very bad place to watch a fight from. But you can also get the other side of it in from that. You can see the looks in people's faces, like in the Charlie Ward fight. You could hear him talking very. You can
hear the impacts really well as well from with the position we're at. We're pretty close to the cage, and you can hear the impacts of the shots, which sometimes you can hear the big ones on TV, but you can hear every shot, so you can kind of have a little bit of extra gauge about how much impact or how much force they're landing with.
100%, yeah, 100%. Moving on then, Jenna Bishop got the unanimous decision over Alina Kalinadu and deserved that one as well, as did Hassan Magomed Sharapov. He beat Rafael Hudson. He got the finish late in round one. We were watching that, Graeme, we were kind of saying this, he's doing well in the first maybe 2-3 minutes of this, but he needs to up the pace and get the finish here, because he was dominant, and he did, to be fair, and we were kind of saying maybe he's not doing enough, and then he did do enough, and he ended up getting the finish in the end. We'll talk about Kieran Clark later, but Magomed Sharapov is another up-and-comer here at 145. I talked to Kieran after about it, and he said he'd like to have that fight, so I think that'd be an interesting fight. But he certainly looks like a terror in there, more of a wrestling style maybe than his brother, who can also wrestle as well, but a very, very, very good fighter, and interesting to see where he goes now after winning 8 in a row. Asel Ajouj then against Liam McCracken. I suppose a different fight than a lot of people were anticipating. I think McCracken probably won the first, and Ajouj won the next two. A lot of wrestling here, a lot of ground and pound, a lot of kind of pulling and dragging out of each other in a fight that a lot of people maybe thought, myself included, was going to be a stand-up affair. But another good win for Asiel. Speaking to him afterwards, and asking him about that, he was kind of saying, it's good to get that, good to get a bit of a drag out fight like that, show the wrestling, show the extra skills, and he's one of those guys that a lot of people in the gym believe is the next big thing, and this was a learning experience for him, I think, against a guy who's, similarly enough experienced and only 1 or 2 less fights than him, but a very, very good prospect, and Liam McCracken as well, who looked good with his striking early against Asiel, who is, obviously a very, very good striker himself. What do you think, Graeme, about those, even Dara Kelly in the fight next, another learning performance, a good performance, a win for both of them, and they both move on. Early in your career, sometimes we look at guys and we kind of forget these lads are still learning, these lads are still improving, and like to have 15 minutes like Asel had here, or what, around the 12-13 minutes that Dara Kelly had, it's big for fighters like that, isn't it, that are up and coming, and to have just not only the experience but the ability to kind of showcase your skills in that time in the cage.
Absolutely, both Asiel, first of all, showed kind of, everybody who's kind of been hearing stuff from the gym knows about his striking and how good a kickboxer he is and all that. But there, you hear in the gym, his grappling has come on, he's gotten a lot better. But you want to see it in a fight. You want to see it against a good guy, and Lee McCracken definitely looked like he was that. And in fairness to him, fair play to him taking the fight. Coming in undefeated 3-0 and taking a really hard fight and really bringing it to Asiel. And Asiel had to show that he can be on his back, that he's comfortable there, that his jiu-jitsu is coming along nicely, that his grappling, that his all-round game is there. He even got cut with a glancing elbow on the ground, and how is he going to react if he gets cut in a difficult fight? He's going to react well, like we saw. So I think it's 15 minutes in the cage is always good as well as a young pro, your sixth pro fight against a difficult guy. It's pretty much a performance that showed things that we wanted to be shown. And for Asael, he seemed happy enough with the performance. He obviously, fighters like him and all fighters would like to go in there and get the finish, but I think he knows that the time in the cage, learning experience, is exactly what he needs now. And maybe 3, 4, 5 more fights he'll be looking at contending for Bellator titles or going elsewhere or whatever. But I think he seems happy enough on this like not slow road, but this steady progression. And a guy like Lee McCracken, I think, was the perfect fight. And I think he wasn't afraid of Asael. He wasn't looking at his striking and thinking, this is a dangerous fight for me. He went in there, to me it looked like he went in there fully expecting to win and brought it to Asael. And that's what you need. These are the kind of learning experiences. And if you can pick up these learning experiences with a win coming from a round down to win the next 2 rounds. He said himself between the second and the third round in his corner, they were telling him, and he knew he had to go out and win that round. And he didn't have the round all his own way, but he did more than enough to win the round. So yeah, I think there was a perfect performance from him in terms of kind of showing where he's at and showing to himself and to the crowd what he can do. And then Dara Kelly, another guy who we have a lot of hope for, and cutting down to a lower weight class when you're a big, strong, muscly guy like him with like cement cinder blocks for arms. There's questions there about how it's going to look, how you're going to look at 145. But he came in with weight to spare, looked good in the fight. Maybe got a little bit tired, but got the finish in the third round, ground and pound. Yeah, really good performance from him, and great to see him look strong and healthy at 145, because sometimes when guys make these first cuts down to a new weight class, they can really you can really see the adverse effects of it. But I didn't see that with Dara here. Yeah,
it was very interesting getting down to 145, because at the wins he looked good on the scale. He didn't look drained or anything. And then at the ceremonials, which were maybe 3 or 4 hours later, he didn't look as good. It was weirdly, but I think maybe that's a thing of maybe he's not used to rehydrating as much as he maybe had to for this one, and that's a thing. It's probably a minor thing in terms of something they'll be able to fix next time going in there. But apparently the weight cut went very well. He looked good on the scale. He looked good in the fight as well. As you said, look, maybe he looked a little bit tired at the start of the third round, but then got the finish in the third round as well. So he got that second win and kept going again. And as you said, it takes time. We've seen it before with other lads, like they go down in weight, and maybe the first couple of fights they're not 100%, and then it takes time to get used to that weight, and then they crack on from there. Now that isn't even really the case, I say, with Dara, but it's probably the case with everyone in terms of like just getting used to being at that weight class, as well as you're only 3 fights into your career. Getting used to being in a fucking fight, is a big thing as well. But definitely a way better performance than the last time, where he said it himself that he just took the wrong decisions at the wrong times and made the wrong moves, and it was just kind of bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. Whereas this one, it was more, it was the opposite. I was like good decision after good decision after good decision. And I think a lot of it was to do with as well just kind of being calm in the positions, not rushing them. And now maybe, maybe he could have gotten the finish, or he could have gotten the earlier, or he could have gotten into a better position quicker or something like that. But why even rush it in that position when you are young in your career? The little bit of extra time in the cage is no harm. You're getting used to the weight class. Take it a little bit safer.
Yeah, it's his third pro fight. We've seen him obviously in these big shows now a couple of times, so it's easy to forget how young in his career he is. And he's definitely got room to improve. He knows that, but that's absolutely normal for some guy, for any guy at the stage of his career he's at.
Yeah, I would say what this was is a very, very smart display. After the last one as well, very smart display. And that, for a guy who has such physical gifts, to have that intelligence as well to put on a performance like this against someone like Derval Jordan, who, I think Zane Simon was saying this recently, that guys with like big physical advantages over lots of other people. When they meet other guys with those physical advantages as well, tend to struggle. And this was exactly the case here. You know, Darval Jordan, an absolute fucking monster of an athlete as well. And Dara really didn't struggle against it. He looked good everywhere. Obviously taking it to ground. His hands look good as well. He said afterwards about his hands improving. That's another thing that's going to improve throughout his career as well. This, you know, maybe people write this off as, oh, it's just another win in the books, but it's an important one in terms of the weight, in terms of the better performance, in terms of the calmness, but in terms of the win as well over a similarly, I suppose, athletic guy is big for Dara Kelly. So he moves on and, you know, give him 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more fights. And he's only going to improve all the time. So big things to come from Dara Kelly, and the word as well. And a sell is similar with the fights are going to improve him. So looking forward to seeing that one. And I suppose that kind of, those were a lot of the undercardy fights. The rest of the fights were moving to, I suppose, the next stage of guys who are reaching their prime or at their prime, or, you know, need to get the big fights now. But for the undercard Irish fighters, I suppose, it was a very, very good night. You know, okay, Skittizi lost out of SBG, but as we mentioned, Kenny one looked good, Dara one looked good, ACL one looked good and got tested as well. So a good night there on the undercard for the next, I suppose, batch of Irish MMA fighters. Richie,
just before you go on there, did I don't know, I was, you know, obviously doing stuff and trying to watch the fight, and from what I saw, Kenny ran through, but then he didn't come out for a post-fight scrum because he was going for a CT scan. So yeah, did he get hit with something, or did we? I'm
not sure. To be honest,
see anything there?
I didn't see it 100%, but yeah, it's I could have got hit with something. I'm not too sure. Like as well, like they could have done. You know, they all go back for medicals afterwards. They could have done some sort of medical tests, said, you know, there's something a little bit off here or something like that, and, you know, the precautions in him for that. He was actually, I think Andy said he was in the crowd afterwards as well, so I assume he got that and was back by the time the card was actually over, so I don't think there's anything to worry about. I saw him tweeting as well that he said, not a scratch on me or whatever, and came back, so yeah, I don't think that was a big thing. I think it was more a precaution than anything else. But do you know what, we'll look up on that again, and I'll let people know if there's anything to report on that. But as I said, I don't think it's I don't think there was anything major there. But yeah, a good win for Kenny anyway, regardless. Richie Smullen, then this was the closest fight at the night. You know, I was talking to a couple of judges afterwards, and there were you wouldn't think it, but I think there was something like 10 decisions on the night or something. There was a lot of decisions, but the Smullen and the Jajelski one was very, very close. The last time Richie Smullen had a close decision in the Tree Arena was against Albert Diaz, I believe. He came out on the wrong side of that, came out on the right side of this one though, and Jesus, I think the first round was for Nijelski, the third round was for Smullen, and it was that middle round. And obviously, you know, as just quickly mentioning again, we are there at cage side, it's very hard for us to watch it, but this was one, and I don't think we're too far off on what we were saying, Graeme, and this one, because I was talking to a couple of the judges as well about that middle round, and they were kind of saying, like, look, he was caught in the guillotine, but then got out, and you're kind of thinking to yourself, is Richie going to do enough here to snatch back this round after the initial guillotine scores high, but the rest of it, like, he's not going to submit him after that. We all kind of know that, but he's still like just about ahead there, and Richie needed to land those shots late, and I think the last 30 seconds took him the round. I really think it did. He landed some nice elbows, some good, not anything massive, and that's, I think, why it's a split, because it was close. But for me, and I think for you as well, looking on cage side, I think Smullen just did about enough to get a big win here over Nijelski. First of all, Graeme, what did you think of the scoring? And it's good to see Richie back in the big time here in the Tree Arena, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a really good fight in terms of, you know, ups and downs. Might not have been spectacular in terms of, you know, people getting knocked down, drag out, and stuff like that. But that would look like a locked in arm-in guillotine in the first round. But we were kind of saying it on Press Row at the time. Like, if you don't get it after like 20, 30 seconds and you're squeezing, you're just going to burn your arms out. And he held on to it for a long time going for it. I've seen Richie in guillotines like that before. I think it was Shinobi FC in Liverpool when Dylan Tuke fought Adam Ventry in the main event. He was in a very similar position, and he ended up getting a guillotine finish himself after escaping. So we've kind of seen Richie there. He's not going to panic there. And once Nijelski didn't have the finish with the initial squeeze, it seemed like he was kind of just wasting his time and burning out his arms. And Smullen just stayed patient and, you know, worked his way out of it. And Nijelski went for it again later in the fight, but I from where we were sitting and from what I said about the arm being burnt out and stuff like that, it seemed like it was you know, he'd missed his opportunity to get that guillotine. So Richie Smullen did really well. You know, as you said, it was a really close round at the end there, and, you know, somebody had to kind of put a stamp on it, and Richie was the one who had the gas tank and had the kind of fortitude to lay it out there. And, like, he didn't exactly, you know, land anything huge or anything, as you said, but he did enough to land some shots to kind of, you know, make sure that the judges remember that. And in a close round like that, that's kind of, you know, what you need to do if you're going to win the round. And, you know, fair play to him. If he hadn't gone for that last kind of flurry, you know, it could have been a different story in a close split decision.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing about Richie Smullen is as well, his levels of cardio are fucking second to none. I think he's an absolute beast. I think it was Will Fleury I was talking to, who was saying that Richie, he nearly overtrains. He trains so much, he just non-stop. And like, that's not even a secret, I don't think, because Richie apparently ran a 10K. I think he said it in the post-fight, but myself and Andy were talking to him, I think, he ran like, he didn't want to cut weight. He didn't want to go into a bat, so he just decided to go. He's actually 11K, he said. He ran 11K to cut weight, put on the what's it called, the sweatsuit, ran the fucking 11K, came back and missed weight and went to bed. He's just a mad bastard, like an absolute madman.
Made weight, you mean? Yeah, not missed weight.
What did I say? Missed weight. Oh yeah, sorry, made weight. So yeah, and that just tells you what Richie is, because like this might be an easy fight to gloss over for a lot of people, but Nijelski beat Pedro Carvalho 2 fights ago, who was ranked at the time, who's, you know, still ranked. This guy is a very, very, very good fighter, and Smullen went in there and beat him, and he's like come back to Bellator, and his first fight back in Bellator. This is a massive win for Richie Smullen. He was a massive underdog here. Now, I gave him as one of my bets of the week over in Sherdog to win by either submission or decision, and it was 5-1. I think he was around 3-1 or 2.5-1 or something like that to win the fight straight up. He was a massive underdog.
Nijelski was on a 9-fight win streak dating back nearly 5 years, so like 6 years, sorry. So like, you know, that was a huge win. Richie Smullen, as we mentioned, things have kind of not worked out for him. He's had a few unfortunate things with like tough and things like that, and, you know, being out of the cage for maybe longer than he'd want. But we mentioned it on the podcast last week, his wins are looking better as time goes on, with like Harry Hardwick and people like that, you know what I mean? Having a win over Harry Hardwick and Bellator in his last Bellator outing is a huge win. So he's kind of reestablished himself as a contender in Bellator after kind of strangely falling out of Bellator back in 2020. So for Richie, you know, maybe there's not that much fanfare. He's not calling out people. He's not really saying too much exciting things. He's just keeping his head down, as you mentioned, and working and, you know, doing his thing his way, going out for 11K runs to cut weight, just putting in the work and just keeping his head down and trucking ahead. And, you know, maybe, you know, with Bellator, the way they're matchmaking, maybe he won't get a name in his next fight, but I'd like to see him get a name, maybe somebody who's maybe not at the top of the division, but somebody who's got a good name, a good test. He can go out there and really kind of, you know, get the statement win that he, in terms of the public, that he deserves, or that he deserves the opportunity to get anyway. Like, you know, Nijelski is obviously, for me and you and people who are tuned in, he's a huge win, but for the casual MMA fan, they probably never heard of him. So, you know, there's a lot of Irish guys. There's not that many places on the main card and in the September card that they announced, but I think Richie Smullen has earned a place on it.
I think for Bellator, though, that's a very hard one to ignore in terms of the level that Nijelski has reached. To ignore like Smullen beating him in terms of the matchmaking from then on, it's hard to do. But having said that, like, look what...
Well, they did it with Carl Moore.
That's what I was just about to say.
They did it with Brian Moore. They did, like, come on.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There's no logic around it, Bellator sometimes. Yeah, and I think this card kind of showed what we were talking about as well. But anyway, we'll get into that more in a second. But yeah, massive win for Richie, and don't understate that win. Absolutely massive. Brian Moore then, you know, another split decision here was it was a close fight. It was definitely close, and Brian was very disappointed with his performance afterwards. He was happy with the heart he shot. I thought he just about won it as well. If I'm being honest, it was a close fight. Like that one, the Richie one, they really could have gone either way. I think the Richie one, I think they got it right. It was one of those, you know, but the Brian one definitely could have gone either way. I think that first round where Luca landed a big one and then Brian landed a big one back, I think that was a big part of the fight. But you know, Brian was saying that he was awkward and he was, you know, very hard to kind of pinned down in terms of what he was doing all the times. He described him as someone like a beginner, being, you know, they catch you with a weird shot just because of the way they fight. And for Brian to kind of come through that and win that fight, I think was you know, was a great to get that W, great to get another win in the books and go forward, because there's, you know, we've talked about Brian a good few times, obviously over the years, loads of times, but in the last couple of fights, it's just been very unlucky in terms of that Lugo fight. He could have won it, very, very close fight. This one, another close fight, and he wins it, so that bit of luck maybe turning a little bit as well. Plus, the pressure is building now on Bellator and Scott Coker, especially, to give him that fight. He said twice now in a row after his fights that he's going to get the Higo fighter, as Brian calls him.
Well, he said we'll see what Coker said. We'll see what happens after
he kind of said
the performance. So he kind of gave himself the out there. Like he says, "Oh, we'll see what happens after the card or whatever." So, you know, I assume they're just going to stick Brian Moore in there against another randomer on another random place on the September card. That's probably what's going to happen, because that's what always happens.
It's ridiculous though, because, like,
you know, and they kind of have not an excuse now, but it wasn't Brian's best performance. You know, it wasn't as technical as he usually is on the feet. He lost his composure a little bit at times in the fight. So, you know, it wasn't the most polished Brian Moore performance. It definitely wasn't as good as his last performance, like he said in the post-fight scrum and things like that. So, you know, if Bellator were looking for an excuse to not give it to him, they probably might be looking there, and I probably expect him just to get a random.
It makes very little sense. It makes little sense, right? Because, like, if you look at it, right. I kind of misspoke a little bit on the post fight. The three biggest receptions, I said Pedro, Brian and Queally. I mean Kieran Clark, Brian and Queally, although Pedro got a good reception as well.
But Brian's, like, the crowd was probably only about 70% by that stage.
They were, but still the crowd, we'll talk about the crowd again in a second, but Brian got as big a reception as anyone got, even though the crowd was only coming in. And, like, I don't think people realise it as well. Like, you know, with Kieran, because they have Drogheda and a big crowd come down from Drogheda, and it's kind of, you know, it's easy to see that because he comes up in the cards and he's got a big crowd behind him. He's near the top of the cards, he's got a big crowd behind him. Whereas Brian is kind of always in that kind of midpoint, and you're thinking, are they just the card file in now, or are they just roaring because it's the first Irish guy to come out? But it's Brian, like, he's with the Wexford people. And I have a friend of mine from Wexford, and, like, those people love their fucking sport in Wexford. They love supporting their own. They love supporting Wexford. And Brian brings a crowd with him. He brings buses of people up, and they get fucking behind him. And also, you can't misplace the fact that Brian Moore is one of those guys that's been around for a long, long, long time. And okay, maybe you're thinking, there isn't that many Irish MMA fans that have been around for a long time. But you know what? There is a good few. Plus, the people who came in, let's say from around me or after me, who were kind of learned Irish MMA from the likes of yourself and Andrew McGahan coming up. I went back and saw, all right, who's the lads that have had 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 fights here? And you saw, you know, Chris Fields, you saw Aisling Daly, you saw Cathal Pendred, Paddy Houlihan, and Brian Moore was another one of those names. He was one of those names. And also, like, there's a lot of people, right, on, say, Wexford or Waterford or down that side of the country who'll travel up, and they love people, you know, from Kilkenny or something like that, from their side of the country, and they're like, okay, he's not a dub, he's not like the rest of them. Like, it's like, for me even, like, I'd have a bit of a softer spot for even a Will Fleury or a Queally or something, because they're from Munster. You know, I think there's a big part to play in that as well, and people maybe misunderstand that, but you can fucking hear it when Brian Moore walks out, that he has that following, and, like, they can see that with Kieran Clark, right? And Kieran Clark absolutely deserves everything he's getting, but why can't they see it with Brian Moore? Plus, with all due respect to Kieran, like, he's still up and coming.
Do you think it's like this guy's undefeated and Brian Moore, you know, He's fought really good guys, but he's 16-9. I know that's a very good record considering who he's fought, but you know, an undefeated guy, kind of to the casual, maybe Bellator think that.
But like, why have they done it with Queally then?
Pushing more, like I don't know. Like, I'm just trying to make logic out of what's going on.
You can make logic out of that, right? Fair enough. Push the undefeated guy, and they should be pushing Kieran Clark. No problem with that at all. But like, Brian Moore has what Kieran has in terms of that, right? But he also has what Queally has in terms of he's been around for a long time. He's a known guy, but he's a higher level than Peter Queally, in my opinion. Like, Peter's done great where he's gotten to and has fought some very, very good guys. But Brian is a very, very high level fighter. And okay, his division, I think, is a very, very good division in Bellator as well and outside of it. But as I said, I think he's a top 20, 25 bantamweight in the world, and I stick by that. Like, he's very, very, very good. We saw that against Lugo. He was right there. He could have won that fight. And Lugo's in, you know, the top 5, top 10 in that division as well. Like, what they need to do now with Brian Moore is give him the Queally spots for and the next couple, right? Put him like fourth in the main card. Have Kieran Clark opening like they always do. Then Brian, then Queally, and then the top two. That's where Brian Moore needs to be on the next card, I think. Against Higo, you know, Higo's the perfect one because Higo agrees to it, Brian agrees to it, Coker agreed to it the last time, if not this time again. Just do it, right? Do it. And if he wins that fight, perfect. You give him an even bigger fight then in a co-main event, a main event in Ireland. You're creating another star here out of a guy who's on the precipice of it because so many people like him for so many different reasons. And the thing about Brian as well is, right, he's a little bit older now. He's been around for a long time. You have to take advantage of it right now. For someone like Kieran Clark, you can take advantage of it in 5 fights, in 10 fights even, because he's going to be around for a long time. He's still young. He's only a few fights into his career. Brian's in his peak right now. If he's going to win those big fights, he's going to win them now or he's never going to win them, right? He's either going to come in now and he's going to beat Higo and he's going to win his next fight, and we'll see how it goes after that. But he will do that in his next 2, 3, 4 fights, or he'll never do it, right? Or he'll never get the opportunity to do it. So why not do it now? Take the advantage of it, put him in there. Everyone wants to see him in a big fight. He's been in all those up and coming fights. Now, for some other guys, I wouldn't say that. You know, for some other guys, I absolutely wouldn't say that. But for Brian Moore, he's absolutely the guy that you have to give him. You have to give him that opportunity now. Will he take it? We'll see. He says he's going to rise to the level. He's going to fight well against other guys. And you know what? It's hard not to believe him after the performances in the last two. That, as I said, that it would have been all different if that Lugo fight had gone the other way. Very, very close. But yeah. Brian Moore, come on Bellator, let's push Brian Moore. Anyway, we better move on. We'll spend the day talking about Brian Moore, but I'm very passionate about Brian. I know you've known Brian for a long time as well, and he's a nice lad. And okay, we're biased and we're 100% biased, but you know, I think he deserves it. He does deserve it. There's no one that deserves it as much as him, because Queally deserves it. He got his chance. Sinead has deserved it. She's got big fights in her chance. It feels like he's almost the only one who hasn't got that chance yet, you know, and it's, you know, he deserves it. Norbert Navigny, do you know what? I don't want to talk too much.
Your new favorite fighter, is he?
My new favorite. Well, he's not even my new. He's been my favorite fighter for a while. Like, I watched him going into the
Wonder Boy.
Well, not my favorite, but he is my new Wonder Boy. That's exactly what he is. That's a good point. Like, Norbert Navigny Jr. If Wonder Boy retired tomorrow, he would take the best.
You've replaced Wonder Boy with a younger model.
I kind of have. And do you know the best thing about it is he came up to me at the weigh-ins, and he was like, "Oh, I watched your show over Sherdog. Thanks very much for everything you said about it." So I like him even more now because of that. Because he
easy way to show hard.
Easy way. But in fairness, anyone who's listened to this, like, I watched him before the Will Flory fight, and that was about 3 years ago now at this stage, and I was just thinking, "Oh my fucking god, this guy!" And I have a lot of respect for Will. I think he's a very, very good fighter. I was like, Jesus Christ, Will's not going to win this fight, basically. And Norbert destroyed him that day, and Will has spoken about that since, that he's kind of realised that's the fucking level I need to reach. But he destroyed Manzolo here as well, coming off a nearly 2 years out. Like, Norbert's father, Olympic gold medalist in wrestling. His striking is phenomenal. Johnny Eblin was there afterwards, and I asked him about him. I was like, "Have you been keeping an eye on Norbert?" And he was like, yeah. And I was like, "Well, you're going to fucking have to, because this guy, I think within 2 years, there's my prediction, within 2 years, this guy will be the champion in Bellator. I think he's that good. He's fucking unbelievable." But anyway, we leave it at that. I like Popov and Sakram. I didn't even watch that fight. Congratulations to Popov for winning it. Mike Shipman and Charlie Ward, Graeme, not a classic. Charlie, you were saying, we were kind of talking about it briefly just before. Charlie landed a few blows and he made Mike kind of think about it. I think Shipman was very, very careful in this fight not to be drawn in, not to play into Charlie's game at all. And I think it kind of worked out for him in the end, Graeme, didn't it? That kind of playing maybe the smarter game and a little frustrated Charlie a little bit. Maybe saw what Fabian did in the last fight, got on top of it a couple of times and ended up winning it that way. Not a classic, Graeme, this one, was it?
Yeah, I think you're right. Shipman definitely played it safe. He's coming in there with only one win in his last 4, even though a lot of people were, saying he should have beaten Fabian Edwards. And, on the record, there it is as a split decision loss. So he kind of needed the win, and playing it safe is probably, understandable. And Charlie, does hit very hard and swings with mean intent. And we saw that a few times, and he did clip Shipman, and Shipman kind of went on his bike a little bit, and Charlie let him know, like, was talking to him in the cage and things like that, being a mad bastard that Charlie is. And it wasn't a classic, but Charlie had his moments. But I think, yeah, you were right, Shipman played it safe and did enough to win the rounds and secure an important win for him in terms of his record and going forward, getting back on the winning track. Yeah,
that middleweight division, it's good at the top, but it's pretty light on the way up. So maybe one more win and he's back in the mix there in the top, probably 6-7. So yeah, big win for Mike, and he goes forward in that one. And for Charlie, I know obviously you probably need to get one or two back to get back into that mix again. So it'll be interesting to see what Charlie does next. Carl Moore then, we talked about this being a potential banana skin, and kind of that's what it was. Another very, very close fight. Carl said afterwards, when the decision was read, if they had said that Maciej Krasinski was the winner, he wouldn't have complained. It was one of those fights that was close, and I think he's right. It was a close fight. I missed the very start of it, Graeme. There was a big head kick, wasn't it? Because we were out doing interviews. You were there watching it. Carl landed a big head kick and kind of got taken down, lost the first round and came back and won the last 2. How big was that head kick? Was it close to finishing, or was it just a kind of a one that landed, or what was it like?
I missed that. I was editing the video.
We all missed it.
Yeah, but you hear the reaction, you look up and it's already happened. But yeah, I think Carl mentioned in his post-fight that there was a body shot that he felt, and he was like, oh shit, this guy, need to be careful. And he kind of put him up against the cage and played it safe again, I think, or tried to play it safe. And it was a close fight, and I think he did just about enough to win. But Maciej is a hard guy to look good against. We've seen it time and time again. It's a kind of a thankless task here for Carl Moore after such a kind of big win against a ranked guy in his last one. We talked about it. If Maciej had kind of fought his last few fights that he fought around the place in Bellator, he probably would have been ranked in the top 10 or 7 or 8 in the Bellator ranking. So it's a huge win, but it's maybe not the name win that maybe we expected after his Albrechtsen win. So I think it wasn't the best performance. He played it safe. He didn't really let his game go for most of the fight, but he did enough to win. And I think he talked in the post-fight scrum about he had a few problems during camp, and he thought about pulling out, but he didn't want to pull out because he been so inactive and had so many kind of pullouts and things like that in the past. So yeah, I think you just kind of move on from this one. You learn from it. You kind of let your game go more. It's a great win in terms of like the toughness of the opponent, but it's a guy who's hard to look good against, and it's a kind of subpar performance from Carl Moore after kind of the spectacularness of his return against Albrechtsen in his last one. Yeah,
it's one of those fights where I just wonder what they're going to do. Maybe that's a thing for a consistent Bellator ring. What are they going to do next? But Carl won. He beat a ranked guy in his last fight. Came in here, didn't look amazing and beat Rosinski, but we all know why, because of the ability Rosinski has. Just what are they going to do next with him is the thing, because what I kind of half expect, you know, as we were talking about earlier on, they'll probably give him another unranked guy who's probably good, you know? They'll find some fucking lad coming out of Dagestan now or something who's like 4-0 and an absolute monster at 205 unranked in his first fight. And I don't know, like, you're in Ireland. Ireland's your biggest market. Why would you not like push guys through? Like give him an Ingliskus. I was talking to a couple of the lads around about Ingliskus.
Like when's the last time we had somebody like Irish who's a big fucking 205er like Carl Moore? You know, people can get behind the big guys more, the casuals and things like that. And you know, it'd be nice to see him, you know, kind of given a big name that in a winnable fight, you know, that we kind of hoped he'd get before, but. As you say, after the trauma of the other Brian Moore, and then his matchmaking and some of the other stuff, it's kind of, you know, unsure about how they'll go with this. But, you know, obviously we're more clued into each and every Irish fighter than maybe like, you know, Bellator. They have a lot of guys on their cards, but, you know, these are two pretty good wins. The matchmakers know these are two very good wins for Carl Moore since he's come back. So hopefully, you know, Jude Samuel and the boys will you know, be listening here and take our advice.
Yeah, probably listen to us and do the exact fucking opposite of what we said. But yeah, but I actually, you know, after this, it's hard to know the right way to go because, you know, speaking to John about it beforehand, he kind of explained what they were doing, and it did make sense. To be fair, they got him in with a tough fight, and you know, just maybe to get him into the promotion, he had to fight someone else then, I suppose, to prove it and to move forward. Look, Carl was kind of saying the opposite again, but you know, the higher weight classes as well. There aren't that many guys there. You put a couple of wins together and you're fucking on your way. Like, so maybe Carl should be on his way now. But
well, he's on a 3-fight win streak since losing, you know, that Cage Warriors heavyweight shot. So at light heavyweight, you know, his only loss is Paul Craig. So
the fucking dogs don't like it. The dogs don't like it, Graeme. Anyway, we'll move on. While you sort that out, I'll move on and talk about Kieran Clark. Do you know what Kieran Clark showed here that I don't think I've seen before? And maybe not seen before, but it's harder to notice when you go into your fights, you take a big shot, and then you're kind of, as Brian Moore kind of said in his fight, and as Clark said before, you show that heart and the will and the desire. And that's maybe all you see at times. And I think for a lot of fighters, and for Kieran himself, I think he was a little bit frustrated before that all people were seeing was the heart and the desire, and they don't see the skills. But I think in this one, and it's not even the skills in this one, because maybe that's maybe even for another fight down the line. We saw the skills, obviously, his grappling and his positional skills and all of that. But what really stuck out to me here that I'd never really 100% noticed before was how athletic Kieran Clark is. Like, and maybe it was because he was right up alongside us for a lot of this fight and grappling right in front of us. I never realized how like strong he looks and how, you know, he's nimble with the strength as well. And I don't know, maybe he's one of those guys you look at him and you know, you see him walking down the street and he just looks like an normal lad, but then when he's there and he's pulling a lad to the ground and fucking, you know, beating him on top, he's really fucking strong and really nimble and athletic. It's interesting because you put that heart with that athleticism, and you know, by all accounts, you know, the skill and the technique is there as well, and you're only 7 fights into your career. That's going to improve over the next 5, 6, 7 fights. Jesus, Kieran Clark is, and he has the crowd behind him as well. He's a lad, I think, like Bellator, we give him a lot of shit at times, but this is one of those guys I think they spotted, maybe even, and we've known Kieran Clark for a long time, but they've spotted as a guy who is ready to push earlier in his career than I think maybe a lot of people have given him credit for, and credit for that as well, because you know, I was talking to Danny McCormick the other day, and I'll be out this week over in Sherdog. I have an interview with her, and she was saying that John, you know, her and Kieran were kind of the two, you know, I think what did she call him, kind of the outside Dubliners, the country folk, or whatever you want to call it, although Kieran really in the country folk, he's from the biggest town in Ireland, but you get what I mean. He really helped them along an awful lot and put a lot of time into them, and credit John for doing that, and it's shown off. Look, Danny's fighting in a world title fight, and Kieran Clark is looking better and better all the time, and you know, coming in against a guy, as I said, short notice as well. It was short notice for both of them. It was a real good performance from Kieran. Okay, you know, as I said, with the opponent, again, maybe he isn't the strongest opponent in the world, but Kieran needed one of these fights, I think, because he's had enough hard fights over the last while, enough proven fights, and I wanted to show his worth, I think, and show how good he is. I was very, very, very impressed, Graeme. What did you think of Kieran?
Yeah, I think it was his best performance of his career so far. I think it's like he's just progressing steadily and quickly, and getting more composed, more relaxed, more experienced in there, and more confident. And it's natural to be when you're in these big spots at the start of your career. Even if you do have an extensive amateur career, you're not used to that huge crowd and all that stuff. You need to kind of get comfortable with that, and he's definitely comfortable with that now. He looked like he was out for a stroll in the park. He didn't look nervous at all. He went in there and implemented his game. Sometimes you hear guys saying, "Oh, I want to show my striking, I want to show this," and that kind of worries me a little bit, as I mentioned. But he went straight in there, got a takedown, and once he did that, once I saw that his game plan and what he was going to do, it was only going to go one way. And Sinner's put up a decent fight and all that stuff, and he's a hard guy to finish, as approved. But that fight was only going one way. I think from when that for 30 seconds in, that takedown happened, and you could see how comfortable Clark was on top, and he kind of had it mostly his own way, and he's 7-0 now. Obviously this wasn't the matchup that they tried to put together. If it fell apart, maybe they'll try and put it together again. But I think maybe a step up, maybe
what about Magomed Sharapov?
Yeah, maybe putting together the Harvey fight again isn't the best move. Maybe putting him in against somebody like that. Yeah, Sharapov would be a good move. On a Dublin card, that would be a huge fight. Yeah,
I like that fight. I think
both guys came out unscathed. September,
long way away. Yeah, and Kieran wants to fight in between that. A lot of people want fights between now, because September is 7 months away. Like, it is a long time. I think for say like a Brian Moore now, that's grand. I think September is grand for Brian Moore. He's been around a long time, and he wants a big hometown fight. That's perfect. But for someone who's only 7 fights into their career, or say Dara Kelly or a Kenny Munganahana, try to get those lads an underfight if they can. Now it's very tough as well, because Bellator, where are they going, and they're not going to Europe as much as they once were and things. I definitely would be I'd be trying to get those lads another fight in between this and progress their careers on again.
Even on the undercards, a lot of Bellator American cards, their undercards are just thrown together as ticket sellers kind of thing. I suppose that is important to them in terms of the crowd and stuff like that. So, but yeah, you could sneak them in here and there. On undercards even there, or start of main cards would be nice, but maybe a bit unrealistic at this stage for some of the guys like Kenny and things like that. But yeah, it'd be nice to see them not have to all of them anyway, have to sit around and wait for 7 months. But
100%. 100%. While we're at Dara Kelly, Kieran Clark, let's talk about the crowd, because look, it was a talking point coming into it, and it was definitely a talking point on the night. As I said, very loud crowd for Brian Moore, very loud crowd for Kieran Clark, as always. The Queely walkout, Carvalho got a great reception, Amosov got a great reception as well, as did Sinead Kavanagh. But the crowd was way lower than it normally is. There was 2 corner top areas cordoned off with big curtains over them, and either side of them there was a good few empty seats, plus there was a good few empty seats throughout the whole arena. I think it's 9,500 is the attendance capacity normally. I would say, I was talking to someone about 7,500, maybe 8,000. Graeme, what would you think the attendance would be?
Yeah, I was thinking about that on the night, trying to work it out. It's really hard to know, but there was definitely like 1,000 seats cordoned off.
I wouldn't say there was 8,500 there, like probably a little bit lower than that.
Yeah. So, it's hard to know, but it definitely wasn't as wasn't full like it usually is, and it was definitely still a really good crowd, and they were getting behind the fights and things like that. But we mentioned it last week, when there's Cage Warriors coming back for the first time in a long time, there's PFL making their Irish event debut, there's another Bellator coming in September. Maybe you're looking at the card being like, it's a good card, but it's not a great card in terms of big draw who's going to say something, who's going to bring that real extra interest. And you have these other cards as options, and the cost of living in Ireland and Dublin is crazy at the moment, and times are tight for a lot of people, and it's expensive. Bellator tickets are expensive if you want a good ticket, like they're not cheap. And yeah, there's just probably a number of things that led to the crowd not being as not being completely full like it usually is.
Yeah, and do you know what? I was kind of thinking coming into it that a lot of the hardcores wouldn't turn up because they would go to Cage Warriors instead, because there was, the main event, a lot of the hardcores I want to watch, and a lot of the Irish fighters as well. But I think for a lot of the Irish hardcores, I think the Cage Warriors card is probably a little bit more appealing. But I actually don't think that was the case. I think a lot of the Irish hardcores did show up. It felt like the casual fans who were out there to get absolutely twisted and nothing else, they weren't there, because like it seemed like a way more chilled, educated crowd than we normally would get, to be honest. So I don't know whether it was the case.
The riffraff didn't come this time. They must have listened to your slating of them.
100%. And I preferred it, to be honest. I thought it was absolutely great, and the crowd that were there made great noise. I wouldn't criticize the people that were there at all. They made great noise. But I think it's a thing for Bellator, right? Might be a little bit of a kick up the arse. Those extra 1,000 or 1,500 seats, that's a good bit of money for a promotion who, I don't think they'd even would disagree with it. They need the money, and they need to be pulling in that extra, 120 quid per seat for 1,500 seats. That's a lot of money. That's a good bit of money for a promotion who's spending a lot to logistics and all of that to come over here to Ireland to put on events. So I think the next time, if they can adjust it and do things to make it more appealing to people, I think they will. And not just from their own point of view, as you said, PFL, Cage Warriors coming as well. I put that to Scott Coker afterwards, and I think you can, if anyone saw the answer he gave me, you can kind of tell what he's thinking, because he kind of said, "Oh well, fair, best of luck to them," or whatever, and you wouldn't, if you didn't care, or if that wasn't a thing, I don't think you would have given a bit of a glib answer like that, to be honest. So big time, big year for Irish MMA. We said it at the end of last year, previewing this year, the battle for Irish MMA.
The battle for Ireland begins.
Yeah, the battle for Ireland begins. So we'll see how that goes. Speaking of battles for Ireland, Sinead Kavanagh won one of them against Leah McCourt a couple of months ago, and she came in here against Sinead Harding, and she won another one for the battle to get towards the top of the division. And you know what? This was one of those fights that really, I think, looked different cage side than it did at home, because I saw a lot of people at home saying, Janae won the fight and it was a close fight and all that. To be honest, Graeme, and I know you agree with me here, this did not look close cage side to me at all. I think Sinead Kavanagh was landing the much harder shots. Janae was just kind of touching her with a lot of them. Now, they were adding up at times, and I think by the end of the fight, Sinead's body was starting to show a little bit, because Janae had done some good work in terms of the numbers in the fight, but the effect that they were having immediately in the fight, I don't think it showed at all. And Sinead was landing hard, even though she didn't land as many. You could probably look at the strike stats and they tell you Janae landed more. I haven't seen them, but I guarantee you that would be the case if you had it in kicks and all of that. But there was no doubt about it, like absolutely zero doubt about it, watching cage side, that the pop that Sinead had was way more than Janae, and I think she was the rightful winner of this fight. You saw it the same, Graeme, didn't you?
Yeah, like I thought Sinead clearly won the fight. Like I posted that she'd won a 30-27 on Twitter, and people were replying like with laughter and no way and things like that. But cage side, Sinead, as you said, definitely wasn't as active as Janae Harding was. Janae threw more. She threw a lot of kicks, a lot of kicks, but they were slapping or just touching. And we were kind of talking about it during the fight. I'm like, all the big impactful strikes are coming from Sinead, and she rocked Harding at one stage. I don't know how people saw that fight for Harding.
Yeah, it was just one of those fights where it was all about the impact. It really was, and I think there was no doubt about who landed the more impactful shots from Sinead Kavanagh. And you know what? What a great display from Sinead. And sometimes you kind of have to ignore that noise as well and just see what's before your eyes. And I thought Sinead, for someone who's been out for a long time with that knee injury, to come back as quickly as she did, maybe it's not even advisable to come back as quickly as she did a fantastic job. It looked very, very good. And I actually think she's going to look a lot better next time out as well, because there's no way you can train as heavily or as well as probably you should going into a fight like the Janae Harding fight, coming off of that injury. But now for the next one, I'd say she will be. She said I think it was St. Catherine's Boxing Club. She said she spent a lot of time there, most of her camps there, and I have no reason to believe that's not true. So she was doing a lot of boxing, probably not as much grappling and wrestling as she would want to, which she might need for future fights. But look,
and when you have a major knee injury like that, and you come back and your opponent's throwing a lot of kicks at you, even if they're not hugely impactful, that could kind of frustrate, or like a lot of kicks being thrown at you could kind of get you out of your game a little bit. But Sinead just stayed calm and waited for her opportunities, and I thought she took her opportunities when they came and landed big shots. But maybe we'll look back at it on TV and I'll look a little bit closer. But I think Sinead, under the circumstances, had a really good performance and clearly won the fight. And as you said, when you come back off a major injury like that, it's very unlikely your next performance is going to be the best of your career. But she did solid, and I thought she won every round. So a really good performance from Sinead considering the injury.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see what's going to happen with the title picture here, because Cyborg has kind of been in limbo here for the last year or so. She's gone off boxing and doing all these different things. Andy asked Scott Coker in the pre-fight interview about the winner of Leah and Kat being next in line. I'm pretty sure he kind of said, there will be, which is weird because if Kat wins, fair enough, no problem. But if Leah wins, Sinead has just beaten
Scott Coker is a nice, agreeable man who'll agree to a lot of things. They won't happen.
Say anything. But, if Leah wins that fight, though, and we're Irish here, come on, Leah, it'll be interesting because like Sinead's beaten Leah, was promised a title shot after she won that fight. And, they could both come out with wins here. Now, maybe we do an old interim title shot. Sinead versus Leah 2. Whoever wins that gets to fight Cyborg. Let Cyborg go off and fight in boxing or bare knuckle for another while or something like that, and come back and fight the winner. Maybe that's the way to do it. Or maybe Cyborg sails off into the sunset and we don't see her anymore. But I think Scott Coker was talking about contracts with Cyborg or something afterwards. So it'll be interesting to see. But a massive win for Sinead, because if she hadn't won this, she's definitely out of that question for the time being. And look, the record's looking a little bit nicer now, 9-5. We've always talked about that record because she's gotten very unlucky. Like, it should at least be 10-4 because that first Janae Harding fight, and there's a couple more in there as well. It could be 11-3.
Well, no, not the first Janae Harding fight. That one's more disputable. It's the Leslie Smith one, no?
The Leslie Smith one. Plus, what was the one? Was it out in Sweden or somewhere? Let me just look here. Let me just pull up her record. Was it the only resident? Blanco. There was this Blanco one, maybe. Yeah. There was one absolute fucking Stonewall robbery in the middle of that as well, like where it was one of those two. I can't remember exactly which one it was, but she was robbed fucking blind. I think it was the Blanco one. Was it robbed blind in that fight? So she's definitely not the luckiest, indeed. But like, she should that Janae Harding fight, very unlucky. The Leslie Smith fight, another, in my opinion, a robbery. Like, Sinead, apart from the Cyborg fight,
maybe they do the Leslie Smith one, like avenge her other kind of controversial loss.
Not a bad fight.
Leslie Smith is only coming off a title shot against Chris Cyborg, even though it was nearly 2 years ago now. But she just avenged her Janae Harding one. Maybe if she's not going to get the title shot, if Cyborg is busy or whatever, then that wouldn't probably makes sense. I saw a couple of people talking about it, and Leslie Smith's like, a fighter who's going to bring it. It was a back and forth fight, even though a lot of people thought Sinead won. Leslie Smith didn't shy away from a fight, so that'd be a good fight for a Dublin card in September if they wanted to do that. But they could also do that on an American card and in between. And if Sinead was to be successful, then they could maybe try and get her back in a title shot or an even bigger fight in Dublin in September. So there's a lot of options with Sinead now that she's back from injury and she got the win. So she's in a good place, and hopefully Bellator will use her like they should. Indeed.
We'll see how that goes. But I like the Leslie fight as well. Maybe that's the fight to make next. Right, the top 3 fights in: Bryce Logan against Peter Queally. Look, tough fight for Peter as well. It was a relatively even fight, I think, for most of it. This is one I think Bryce was a little bit nervous early after the walkout and all of that. Ended up setting, and like I think Peter was kind of reaching in and trying to get to Bryce as he was being a little bit defensive early, and maybe that played a little bit against Peter because he didn't want to leave it behind him. It kind of seemed to be one of those fights for me, and maybe went a little bit too hard at it, and then Bryce kind of came into the fight, and there was big elbow in the clinch, knocked down Peter, and he ended up finishing him with ground and pound. And very, very tough loss, obviously coming off of a couple of losses. Bryce Logan was 3 losses deep coming into this fight as well, and for Peter it's a big time in his career. He's 37, 38 years of age now, after reaching, the peak in terms of fighting for a title in his last one, or his last one before that, and then fighting Benson Henderson. This again, like as I said, he came into media day, and it was kind of very negative out of him, I suppose, and a lot of questions, myself included, were a bit negative in terms of, you've dropped down in quality, in terms of, that's not an easy thing to deal with, I suppose, and then go in and get finished like this. It's just, I just wonder what's next for Peter at this stage of his career, after reaching that mountain and now after losing kind of on the way down. Again, just to reach that level was very, very good, but it's tough now. It's very, very tough for Peter. Here's an idea, Graeme, right? I don't know if you'd like it or not, but Miles Price doesn't seem to be in PFL this year. How about Miles Price versus Peter Queally? Do that rematch, the Ireland versus Ireland fight everyone is kind of crying out for. That'll draw in more of the crowd as well. What do you think of that in the next time?
Yeah, like it makes a lot of sense. It was a very close, contested split decision, so it makes a lot of sense. But I think Miles Price, is he still a PFL, or has he been released?
I don't think so. I think one wasn't the roster announced for the next season. I don't think he's on it. I'd say he's probably free. I might be wrong there now. Maybe it hasn't been released, but there was rumors coming out and all. I didn't see him on it, so I'd say he's probably available.
Yeah, well, obviously, Peter, as you said, a lot can change in 2 years. You're on the top of the world. You beat Tricky Pitbull. You're going into a huge fight, a rematch against Pitbull, and obviously that didn't go his way. And the Benson Henderson fight is obviously, Benson. Everybody knows Benson Henderson. He's a very difficult matchup over 5 rounds for anybody, and this is a kind of a come down fight. We talked about it on the podcast last week. It's hard to get yourself as motivated for this, and maybe, as you said, maybe he fought a little bit out of his game and tried to push the pace a little bit more than he usually does, and maybe he was probably edging the fight up until the point, but it was very up until the point of the elbow, but it was very close. And in fairness to Logan, it was a really, really nice elbow, beautiful elbow that dropped him, and he pounced and finished, and no excuses there. From Queally, he was beaten. It's a tough one to take, and if Miles Price might be the kind of guy who can kind of light the fire a little bit more again under Peter Queally's and get him in the, I'm going to avenge my loss, my close decision loss, and kind of beat this guy Miles Price, who's kind of said things that I don't like about my teammates and stuff like that. That can kind of maybe get the motivation going again and get Peter Queally kind of back in the right mental place, because as you said, he didn't really seem as excited and up for it in even the fight week media stuff and things like that, as obviously when you're fighting Benson Henderson and fighting for your titles and things like that, it's a different kind of motivation.
Yeah, and it wasn't even that he wasn't up for it. I just don't think he was up for talking about, talking about the fights and doing interviews and stuff, which is absolutely he's right and stuff. But yeah, that kind of negative mindset from all sides is definitely not a good thing. And but credit to Bryce Logan as well. He came into the Lions Den with that big walkout, settled into the fight and won it. So definitely credit to him.
A massive win for him. As you said,
huge.
He had not the greatest time so far in Bellator. He lost a split decision to Karakanian coming in. There's no shame in that, but he'd lost a couple of fights since then, and this was a huge moment for him. If he lost this, he'd probably be cut.
Yeah, 100%.
He's coming in. There's, as you said, there's the zombie walkout. The crowd are going mad. Everybody's on Queally's side, and he pulled it out of the bag with that huge elbow, and it was a huge moment for him in his career. Might be a turning point.
Yeah, 100%. Jeremy Kennedy and Pedro Carvalho. This was, an absolute domination basically for Jeremy Kennedy, and 100% credit to him. He came over. I was talking to his coach Eric Nixick and Kai Kameka the third as well, one of his teammates, and they looked confident all week. They were hanging around. They were getting in early, and he was one of those guys that looked prepared and looked ready for it, and went in against Pedro Carvalho and just dominated the fight and did so well. Took him down. One with ease on the ground.
Pedro went for a guillotine.
Yeah,
and,
he did.
Ended up kind of not getting it on the bottom, and from there Kennedy looked comfortable, and it was a difficult night for Pedro all around. Jeremy Kennedy's a really, really good grappler, and he kind of got into his game early and kind of stayed there and had a pretty easy night, unfortunately, for Pedro. Yeah,
when you see someone going for a guillotine early and stuff, you're thinking, okay, Jesus, okay, if he gets it, great, but you're fighting a wrestler. I was going to say American wrestler, he's from Canada, but a good wrestler fighting out of America, in Extreme Couture, who's a lot of good wrestlers there as well. And you're thinking, Jesus, is that a bit of a tactical mistake? But, it didn't lose him the fight or lose him the round even or anything. He ended up getting back up. But the biggest issue, I think, for Pedro in this fight, and credit to Jeremy on the other side of it then, was it felt like he couldn't get anything at the end of his strikes. And what I mean by that is, like, he never seemed to be in the right position to hit Jeremy, and Jeremy was never in the right position to be hit by Pedro, if you get me. So credit to Jeremy on that, and for Pedro, did I call him Peter there? Pedro on the other side of it. It was just a real it must have been so frustrating when you're in a fight like that, where you get the fight to the feet, where you think, look, this is where I'm going to win it. You can't get anything going there, and then the fight gets to the ground, and Kennedy's just dominating you in every aspect of it there as well, which, hasn't always been the case for Pedro. But look, it was a very, very bad night for Pedro in terms of the fight itself. But he's as I said, he's only 27 years of age. He'll be back again. It'll be another learning experience. The point in his game where, like, wrestling, we always say it in fights, that wrestling really changes a fight in terms of the striking, and when it changes it maybe so abruptly, like in a fight like this, it's something you have to learn and you have to adjust to, because, like, he did get up and try to get his striking going, but he just couldn't. And I think that you have to find a way to draw a guy like Kennedy, and you have to find a way to get your striking working and to be safe as well against a wrestle-heavy guy like that. And Pedro was not able to do that on Saturday night, and Kennedy was able to do everything he wanted in terms of the other side of it then. So, back to the drawing board, I suppose, for Pedro on that side of it. For Kennedy, he moves onwards and upwards. Scott Coker afterwards, he was very, very low on Kennedy versus Carvalho, or versus Patricio, which seemed to everyone to make perfect sense, considering the Pico fight went the way it did. Okay, but he's beaten Pedro here 19-3, but he said he wants the Kennedy versus Pico fight to happen again. Do they want to push Pico into that title fight? I think we all know the answer to that question. Yeah, so a bit unfair on Jeremy Kennedy, I think. So,
damn you, Kennedy, beating all our guys.
How dare you? But very good win for Jeremy Kennedy.
Jeremy Kennedy, he's cut for the UFC, 4 wins, 1 loss to Volkanovski, and cut from the UFC. So,
not the best look, that poor lad, is he?
Yeah, why don't people not like Jeremy Kennedy? Coker's like, fuck this guy, basically.
And he's a great nickname as well. What is it? JBC, Junior Bacon Cheeseburger, because he used to eat nothing but Junior Bacon Cheeseburgers. He gave a great interview, actually, if you haven't seen it, the pre-fight. He said he got a nutritionist when he was just an up-and-coming fighter, and he said he changed from one burger joint to, like, Wendy's, because he thought it'd be better for him because they do a real salad and stuff like that when he was coming up. So yeah, a man after my own heart, Jeremy Kennedy. So fair play to him, very good win there. And in the main event, you couldn't have asked for a more perfect week for Yaroslav Amosov. Obviously, he coming from fighting the war in Ukraine, it was the 1-year anniversary. He spoke about that. He spoke strongly anti-Russia. He said, what were the words he said about Putin? He was like evil Putin or something like that. the crowd when he came out got a massive reception. You know, I had Philip O'Connor on at the start of this war, geez, a year ago now. It's mad to think it's that long, but you know, and we were kind of saying like the Irish people really have an affinity for people like Ukraine, because we kind of understand it. Now we personally don't, but like our very close ancestors do, in terms of like we are, you know, we were the Ukraine to Russia, you know, as Ireland is to England, or that's maybe not necessarily, but that's, I think, how a lot of people might view it, and we understand them. I think we have a soft spot, or maybe not everyone, but a lot of people in the country, and I think you could, by the reception that Amasov got, I think you could feel that. Now there's probably a good few Ukrainians here as well, and maybe there's a few of them in the crowd as well watching him, and I know myself and Andy were walking out afterwards, and Andy got a video of it that maybe 10, 15 Ukrainian fans and young people as well that mightn't have been able to even get in were waiting for Amasov afterwards, and waited around for about an hour afterwards to greet him, and that was absolutely lovely. And in the middle of it all, then he puts on one of the fucking best displays I've ever seen from a fighter in person. Mesmeric, I would call it, right up there with Conor McGregor in terms of the best fighters I think to ever fight in Ireland. This guy is different level. I know people say, oh, you're forgetting Rich Franklin and Mark Coleman and all. I'm not. Amasov is that good. He's 27-0, and he fought Logan Storley before. Went in a close fight with him. Logan Storley could have won that fight. It was very close. And this time, Amasov absolutely destroyed him. You never hear judges saying, we had an easy night. But after that one, they were saying, oh, that was a pretty easy night, you know. 5 rounds. Amasov won every single one handily. There was no question on any of them. His hands looked so much better. His wrestling was better the first time as well than Storley's, but looked even a level ahead again this time. He just took him down whenever he wanted. He jabbed him up, he kicked him up, he boxed him up. This was an absolute destruction. Now, just on the other side, before we move back to Amasov again, because I know we don't speak too much about Storley, but Storley's one of two things. He was either injured coming into this fight and struggled to get to the weight, or should be fighting at 155, because he didn't look like a guy that, and you know, easy for me to say, I suppose, and who am I to talk, but seeing a lot of fighters and that the weight that they're at, or the shape that they're in fights, is a different level to what Logan Storley looked here. Like, he looked like a 155 or fighting a 170. He didn't look in the sort of shape you'd expect from a championship level fight. Now, as I said, that might be an injury, and he did nothing but fucking suck water out of himself to make 170, and that could be it as well. I don't think he's always been like that before, but he didn't look in the shape you'd expect out of a top level fighter at that. But we will digress on that anyway. Graeme, what did you think of Amasov here? It's hard to not be impressed by him, not just in the fight but all week as well.
Yeah, absolutely. He had a brilliant performance. He really looked, sometimes you see guys, they look in the zone. They really look like, you know, they're not going to be beaten that night. And pretty much straight away, he just started to do what he wanted, and he looked really in the zone. He looked flowy. He looked like he just looked like he was going to dominate the fight, and he did. You know, Storley didn't really get anything going. As you said, he didn't look great. Maybe there was something going on. Maybe there was problems with the weight cut or an injury or something like that, as you hinted at there, or as you mentioned there. Yeah, I think even if Storley had been at his best, it would have been hard to look good here against Amasov in that mood, in that form. You know, he just dominated the fight. You know, the first one was a close split decision that kind of, the fight was taken over by Storley as it went on, and you know, there was questions of, if it had been 5 rounds, how would it have went? But you know, they could have been fighting all night, and Amasov would have dominated all night. He was just a level above.
Absolutely brilliant, an absolute joy to watch. And you know, we were kind of giving out maybe about this, not necessarily even giving out, but kind of saying, oh Jesus, an odd fight to put on here. But do you know what, I think a lot
I was actually always excited about it, so I was just wondering about how the crowd was going to react. Was the crowd going to empty? And it did it didn't empty. A few people left, but there was really, really good support, more than I expected.
100%.
You know, the fight delivered, so like you knew you were watching something good, so the people stuck around, even though, you know, if I thought it was always going to go to a dominant 5-round decision, I thought maybe, there might not be many people there when the hand is raised at the end, but there definitely was.
Yeah, and of the crowd that was there, I would say 99% of them actually stayed for the main event. So there was no max exodus before the fight. Now, a little bit in the 4th round, you know, when someone's 4 rounds up, and we all know how it's going to end, you know, Amasov is going to win feudedly, but it was not anything abnormal or anything. So, you know, that's why I think as well that there was a lot of the hardcores actually there in terms of the fans, because they wanted to see this fight and they stuck around for it, and they were very, very, very respectful as well of Amasov and of Ukraine and all of that. So credit to the, you know, Irish fans and MMA fans and all. They get a hard rap at times, but the fans here are phenomenal.
From a certain Sean Sheehan.
What did I? Well,
sorry, you gotta apologise to the Irish MMA fans for slagging them off.
Oh, okay. The fans that I was giving
Dublin
out
is the best. Let me hear
Dublin's
you say
the worst. The
Dublin fans.
The Dublin fans weren't there. It was all Drogheda, Wexford, you know, Waterford. Was there any Dublin? Sinead Kavanagh was the only dub on this card, I'd say. Was she? Who else? Jesus, you know, there was very few dubs. Kenny, Richie. Do you know what? Yeah, Richie Smullen's not from Dublin. Let's go through it, right? Skittizi, Italy. Kenny's from Dublin. Assel is from France. Dara Kelly's from Donegal. Richie Smullen's from Wicklow. Brian Moore is from Wexford. Charlie Ward is from the Midlands somewhere, isn't he? Carl Moore is from up the north. Kieran Clark is from Drogheda. Sinead is from Dublin. Okay, Queely's from Waterford. Carvalho, Dublin / Portugal. Yeah, so there's only like 2 dubs on the whole card. Maybe that's it.
But they're all adopted dubs.
Yeah, you know? No, that's it. No dubs showed up.
Part of the dub family.
Sean,
when you're adopted, you get treated like any other.
Am I an adopted dub? So I'm sure I'm fucking above in Dublin more than most.
No, you're hated with a fierce passion.
Fierce passion by the dubs. But yeah, so that was it. You know, all in all, you know, I would say an unmissable main event performance by Amasov. So and other than that, maybe like a fair to middling card, I would say. Not a bad card. It definitely wasn't a bad card. Definitely wasn't a great card. Very good to see the up and coming performance.
It was a good night for the Irish prospects, though.
It was. That was the highlight for Ireland, I suppose. But the Sinead win was a big highlight for Ireland. The Carl and Brian Moore wins were big highlights as well for Ireland as they move on, as well as, you know, the up and comers like Kieran, Brian Moore, Richie Smullen. You could throw him in there as well, and Dara, and Kenny as well. So very good. And, you know, to see, I think a lot of people, as we said in the future, I saw Norbert fighting live, I saw Amasov fighting live, even Kennedy if he's fighting for a title. So yeah, all in all, a pretty good night. Right, we're an hour and a half in. We better fucking move on and talk a little bit about UFC 285. We won't stick in this forever because there's a preview coming out this week. The lads, I don't know if I'll be joining them or not. I probably will, but we're going to take a look just at the top 2 fights here. But
before you go on. Just to the listeners, how many people know that Ian Garry's fighting this week?
Yeah, I would say very few. So you probably forget now. Maybe during the week it'll grow a bit, but yeah, look, Bellator Dublin probably didn't help, but there was a recent one as well where Ian was fighting around the Bellator card and a lot of people were talking about him. Not this time though, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the fact that he's not in Ireland, or, you know, not really doing Irish interviews and things like that as much as he once was, or whatever it might be. Yeah, definitely flying under the radar.
They need to, you know, obviously fighting in America is great and all, but they need to put him on a European card where the fans get a chance to go over and kind of bond with Ian Garry, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think the like latching onto McGregor stuff really hasn't worked either. I think that's actually put a lot of people off maybe a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how this. But look, because in there he puts on a big performance.
He's telling the part of the story about how he kind of got into MMA, and you know, he shouldn't shy away from that. But I think, you know, the fans and people like that are going to obviously associate any Irish fighter with McGregor, like we always see every time an Irish fighter kind of comes to prominence. Everybody's talking about McGregor in the same breath.
But he also used to be like the anti-SPG guy and in you know, Team KF. So, and I think the Irish fans kind of know that. So I just felt all a little bit contrived, for want of a better word, maybe. But as I said, he's 10-0. He wins another one here, gets a big finish here, and that's all fucking forgotten about again. And look, Ian has the ability. He's an absolutely fantastic fighter, a fantastic up-and-coming prospect. And I said it recently, you know, after maybe his first or second UFC fight, that it's actually, do you know what, it's maybe no harm he's flying under the radar a little bit coming in here, or has even a little bit recently. Go in there, prepare for your fights, train hard, as I'm sure he has been. You know, he's a new family, he's only after getting married, he's only after having a baby and all of that. you know, take your time. You're only young. You're only 10 fights into your career. Go in here against Keenan Song, get another win, and you're moving on up. And, you know, in 6 months, in a year's time, we can start getting hyped about it again. So maybe it's no harm.
No, I like the matchup, but I just think it'd be, if they could get him on just a European card, or even, you know, just get a bit more hype on him, make it a little bit more content behind him. The UFC could put out a couple of videos, or hopefully, you know, he'll be on like Ariel's show or something like that this week, and, you know, get a bit of hype going, because he deserves it. He's like a really, really good prospect, a huge prospect. Like this is a good fight for him to go out and, you know, showcase his abilities. Like this guy, Keenan Song, when he wins by finish, and he has power, and he can finish people. So you got to be wary. It's not a walkover, but should be a nice fight for Ian to kind of showcase his skills again and get more comfortable. And, you know, hopefully he's been, you know, developing the gym like we've seen fight to fight in the past. There's no reason to think not. Obviously, he's, you know, a lot going on in his personal life, but I'm sure he's still in the gym. We haven't heard anything that he isn't. Well, I haven't anyway. So yeah, I expect him to go in there and win and look good here. But I wish there was a bit more hype behind it, because I think he deserves it. You know, maybe people don't like certain things about maybe his personal decisions, but in terms of fighting and things like that, you know, I think he deserves more hype and more respect, and hopefully, you know, he can go out there, look good, and kind of build that up, and hopefully, you know, pre-fight or fight week, we'll see some more of Ian and get some more insights into what's been going on and build a hype that way. But, you know, this is a card with, you know, big fights on it, and he's kind of, you know, buried on the prelim, so maybe that won't happen. But yeah, I think you know, he's been a little bit forgotten about, but undeservedly. But maybe that's because he's, you know, over in America, and he hasn't really been doing much. There's a lot going on in terms of like the Bellator event that just happened and stuff in Ireland. So yeah, I think Ian's going to go in there and you know, maybe have to be careful early, but I think he should, you know, have enough to look good here and to, you know, come out unscathed. And if he wants, hop back in there maybe quickly. You know, staying active, I think, is important when you're a young fighter developing in your career. And, you know, getting a win against Keenan Song would be a good win, but it's not going to push you into a place where the UFC are going to be matching you against top 15 guys already. So I think the matchmaking is good, and it's Ian's fight to go out and look good, and hopefully he does, and, you know, the fan base kind of wakes up again.
Yeah, 100%. It's a very winnable fight for him. You know, as you said, Keenan Song, a good fighter, but, you know, he lost Alex Morono, finished by Mac Griffin, finished by Brad Riddell, fought Israel Adesanya back in the day, funnily enough, so and got knocked out by him as well. So I think, yeah, I think Ian will probably be looking for the finish here, and it could be another chance to impress. So it'll be all hype next week, you know, and as I said, things quickly change like that you nearly forget about him this week, and it'll probably be all talk next week. So, you know, and I hope it is. It'll be very good.
Why do you think it is that it's like the hype is kind of cooled so much?
Do you know what? I don't think the hype is cool necessarily, but like, there was a lot of hype for, Gary's up and coming guy. He's up and coming guy. He needs to get into the UFC. He needs to get in the UFC. He needs to fight for cage style. Did that, got into the UFC, and then it changed, because I remember talking directly after that fight. A lot of people were talking like, "Oh, they seen Garry. He's only all fucking hype. He's not going to be the next McGregor and all this." I'm like, Ian Garry was like fucking 7-8 fights into his career at that stage. He goes in and he's won and looked good in all of his fights so far. Again, he hasn't looked like an absolute killer in every single moment of every fight, but there hasn't been one part of any fight where I've been kind of worried where he's either not getting experience or not being good. But like, sometimes people, the expectations are just weird, or like one stage you're the guy that everyone's kind of getting behind.
Come back to me when he's fighting for a title.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We were all shooting for something. We were all shooting for Ian Garry to get into the UFC. Next thing he gets into the UFC, and we're like, oh well, sure, what's he doing now? Like, it's like, calm down. We need to. And Ian Garry, I've spoken to him loads of times in the past, and he said this himself. He's talked about years in terms of improvements, years in terms of getting to the rankings, years in terms of getting to title shots, and like, some people aren't that patient in terms of the fans waiting for it. And you know what? There's there's no harm in that either, I don't think. If it was just hype all the time, that's the type of thing that fucking gets in your head, and not even just gets in your head, but it could drag you down in terms of there's so much pressure on it. So yeah, it's no harm. Go in there, prepare for the fight, have a fight, and that's it. And yeah, I do agree with you though. Like, why aren't the UFC coming back to Ireland? No, I have enough fucking hotels to pay for, but you get me. Like, it's ridiculous that they haven't got an Irish card coming back, but we'll see how that goes anyway. But look, as I said, the aftermath will be bigger than the before mat, as I think some articles are being called now. There's a couple of things, Graeme, just in the undercard before we move to the top. Like Rabzabov is on this card, and I've covered a lot of PFL over the last couple of years. He was a very good fighter in PFL. You know, only lost to kind of their big guys there. He's 21 fights in, and he's only lost 4 of them, so he's a good fighter. Fahid Basharat is also on this card as well, one of the best up-and-comers out of... he was in London Shoot, I think is he over in Vegas or somewhere now, but very, very, very good fighter at 9-0. And then there's lots of other stuff as well on this card. Bo Nickel, one of the top prospects in the world, at 3-0 is on it. Gamrot against Jalen Turner is a fucking brilliant fight. Shavkat against Jeff Neal. Jesus Christ, this is a legitimately brilliant card. Even Cody Garbrandt is fighting for his probably his job on this card. But the top two then, 125-pound title, Valentina Shevchenko against Alexa Grasso, and John Jones against Cyril Gane, the return of John Jones. I never thought I'd see the day, but he's back. Let's talk quickly about Valentina versus Alexa Grasso first. Look, for Alexa here, I think the problem for Alexa Grasso is her best route to winning most fights is like her jab, her good technical striking, and you know, she's a few submissions I suppose on the ground and not bad, but you're fighting someone like Valentina Shevchenko here who is going to hit harder than you. Her style of Muay Thai is very hard for a boxing style to deal with, plus she's really strong in the clinch, has big throws, can put you on your ass, your grass, I don't know, and beat you when you get there as well. Now, recent fights, Valentina hasn't been the Valentina of old, and maybe Grasso can play into it. And do you know what? I think Valentina will win, but it'll probably be a closer fight than people think. But it's the only thing as well, the motivation here for Valentina. Where are those levels at? Like, there's a lot of talk about having the Amanda fight again. Alexa's probably the last of like the contenders that we don't think have a good chance. Let's say if Blanchfield is in there, Firo, I think they have more of a chance, if you get me, in terms of people's minds, if not in actuality, if we see Shevchenko at the top. So could that be a potential banana skin for Shevchenko? I'm maybe kind of looking for reasons there. This should be a straightforward enough Shevchenko win here. Even though I like Alexa Grasso, I think she's a very good fighter.
I think it is Valentina's kind of fight to lose, but maybe there is a motivation thing. And maybe she, you know, I think you're right. Even though she's been winning, she's still been winning. She hasn't looked as good recently. She, you know, obviously Talia Santos was a split decision, but I thought she won the fight. But yeah, she definitely hasn't looked like the killer that we kind of got used to her looking like over the years. So it's a big moment for Alexa Grasso. It's you know, she's worked a long time for this, and she'll definitely be motivated. So maybe that could play into it. But I just think it's a bad style matchup. She's probably Valentina's probably just a little bit better everywhere, unfortunately. But you know, you could land something big early, or you know, something could happen, and she could win this. I wouldn't be too surprised. But I think the pick is definitely Valentina.
I think the strength in the clinch will be a big part of this, and the clinch as well in the middle of the cage that Valentina is so good at. Grasso gets caught in that position an awful lot in her fights and usually doesn't do too bad, but against Valentina it's a different story there, and I think that might play a big part in it as well. And Valentina will get into that position, I think, against Alexa, because she likes to fight longer, and Valentina likes to get inside and kind of whip inside. And if you're fighting against someone longer like that, there will be tie-ups in the middle, and if you get tied up against Valentina, it's an underrated part of her game. But her trips, her clinches, her slams are elite, and against someone like Grasso, I think, who Valentina is a better athlete than, and that strength battle in there will, in my opinion, play a big factor if it does go there, and it seems to me like it will. So yeah, as I said, I do think Grasso will do a little bit better than maybe a lot of people give her credit for, but I think it'll be Shevchenko in the end. And then John Jones versus Cyril Gane. It's been God, it feels like it's been forever since we've seen John Jones fight. His last fight was that disappointing display against Dominic Reyes. 2020, the 8th of the 2nd, 2020.
I think his last 3 fights were quite disappointing.
Well, the Smith one wasn't really. He could have lost it because of that illegal blow, wasn't he? But he kind of destroyed Smith from what I believe. But yeah, the Santos one wasn't great. The Reyes one wasn't great. And he's fighting now against Cyril Gane. I was talking to... I heard a few fans asking Eugene Behrman who they think would win, and he said Cyril Gane, so maybe he'd know better than me. One part I would throw at this, Graeme, and not to bring judging into everything again as well, but let's say this is the 5-round technical fight that I think maybe a lot of people are expecting. I wonder, we've seen the last 2 John Jones fights, they were closer than anyone's before. I wonder, with the fact that John Jones is more kind of a point fighting fighter and likes to kind of touch you up and add up his numbers, and according to his tweets, really doesn't understand how fights are judged. I wonder, does that fight really play against John Jones if Gagne's landing a bit harder, and the shots that Gane does land, even let's say we come to the end of the night and it's 100 strikes landed from John Jones and 77 from Gane, but Gane has landed to 12 or 13 harder shots that John Jones never landed throughout the fight, and Gane ends up winning, and John Jones is like, what are you talking about? And people are tweeting pictures of the numbers. It feels like one of those fights for me. It really does. And, we always seem to always get them in the big pay-per-views, where people are giving out about the judging and everything. But that's the fight I envision here, to be honest. What's the fight you envision?
Yeah, you could be right. But, John Jones has been out a long time. You know what I mean? A long time. 3 years, more than 3 years since that. Moving up from 205 to... fighting guys that are walking in there 20, 30 pounds heavier than him, at least, probably. It's hard to know what John Jones is going to look like. Was he that motivated going into his last couple of fights? I probably don't think so. Is he motivated going into this one? Who knows? With John Jones, you just don't know what's going on. He could be out partying. He could be, who knows? Nobody knows what John Jones is doing. He could be doing mad shit. He said himself in the past that he likes to give himself an out. If he loses, I was out partying the week before, so that's why I lost, kind of thing like that. And if hopefully he's not doing that. Hopefully he's zoned in here, because this could be a defining moment or defining win for an already amazing career if he goes in there and looks like the John Jones that everybody knows he has the potential to be, but maybe recently hasn't lived up to or hasn't produced. And he's coming in there against a really technical guy who's not going to make it easy for him. So John Jones is going to have to be on his game here to win. I think I think if he's not on it, I think Cyril will be able to eke out enough rounds to win it. But with John Jones, he's so unbelievably talented, and his body is perfect for MMA, and he's just so naturally gifted, on top of being a ridiculous athlete and having like a lot of advantages that other people don't have. But Cyril has a lot of advantages as well. So this is just for me, it's so intriguing, and I can't wait for it. And I actually don't know how it's going to look. I think a lot depends on John Jones, how this is going to look.
Here's the question for you, Graeme, right? What has been the biggest, let's say, new shot that has come into MMA in the last 3 years? Like what technique? Shot in
the arm, like?
No, what technique?
Shot? Yeah. Oh, okay. The calf kick.
There you go. I just wonder.
John Jones has no calves.
Yeah, that's true. What
are you going to kick? What are you going to kick? Run there.
Just kick him bone. I wonder if Gane is just going to kick the shit out of his calves, because I think he can do that as well. Like, and John Jones will have never seen that before, really. And I was talking to someone the other day as well about it, and they were like saying John Jones has always struggled against taller guys, whether it's Reyes or Gustafsson the first time and somewhat the second time, not as much the second time, but. I just wonder if that'll be an issue, and that's a way to play a longer game again that really didn't exist as much the last time John Jones fought. So I wonder. Yeah. I just wonder if that plays a part.
John Jones will probably be hunting for those oblique kicks that he uses so well as well, though, and
Yeah. Gane fights an outside game as well. He's not only a longer guy and a bigger guy. He fights a very big, long game. it's a fucking very intriguing fight. But then again, right, Jon Jones is one of the smartest fighters to ever fight in the UFC. Now, maybe not in judging and maybe not fucking outside the cage and all of that, but inside the cage, he is a really smart guy. And to think...
I know what you mean in a way, but in another way, he tries to fight to the kind of strength
he does, yeah,
the realm. And if he does that here, he just can't do that here.
But what if he
has to fight to his strengths?
If he does that here and beats Gane doing that, like, but to do that,
that would be an absolutely miraculous. That would be the biggest statement win of his career and an already unbelievable career.
So, what do you think he needs to do? Wrestle him, take him down?
I think he needs to do everything. I think he needs to make Cyril uncomfortable and put him in places he's never been before, and just just make it difficult. And obviously point fighting is a bit of a, you said that something to that effect earlier. I don't think that's what Jon Jones is doing. I think Jon Jones's strikes have a lot of impact, even when he is kind of just throwing it out there without full force. We've seen the damage he can do, but Cyril's been in there against some serious hitters, and he's used to taking that power, so that's going to play into it as well. Like, will Jon Jones' shots have the same impact that they've been having throughout his career? He's fought a lot of guys that are blowing up 185ers and 205ers and things like that, and Alexander Gustafsson's reach and height and stuff was similar to Jones's, and he struggled in the first fight there in the early rounds anyway. So yeah, I think I don't know, there's just so many questions in my mind about how this is going to go, and in a way I'd love to see Jon Jones kind of go out there and win impressively, just to kind of fulfill his ridiculous potential, because even though he's got some ridiculous accolades, and like the way he destroyed Shogun and his reign and the Cormier wins, even though there's like asterisk around one of them and stuff, or all that stuff, whatever, but to fulfill even though he's done all that stuff, he hasn't, in my opinion, fulfilled the potential. Like, I remember watching him coming up and very early in his career and just being like, this guy is just is a new type of guy. He's going to be unstoppable, and he should have been, and he kind of got in his own way as people kind of predicted. The only thing that was going to stop Jon Jones was Jon Jones, and it would be nice in a way, even though all the a lot of people have put a lot of weight into the outside of the cage stuff. Like, I kind of obviously we talk about that stuff, but a lot of the time I'm just looking at the fighter and analysing it from that standpoint, and I'd love to see him go out there and fulfill his potential and just look amazing and win. But it is a really big ask. Like, this is more than 3 years out. Like, this is a big ask, moving up against such a big technical guy. Like, this is the most technical guy in the heavyweight division maybe ever. There's so many different integers in this, isn't there? Even just like the fact that a lot of new fans were created during the pandemic that have never seen Jon Jones fight live. Like, I'm sure they've gone back and watched these fights, and I think there was like a lot of people who don't actually appreciate how good Jon Jones was, and maybe only saw his last 2 fights live and don't appreciate how good Jon Jones was. And it's interesting, maybe he won't be that guy again. Maybe he won't be the dominant force he once was, and maybe we are looking to two rose tinted glass in terms of a fighter. We know what Jon Jones is like outside of the cage and all of that, and the whole drug issues and all of that sort of stuff. But if he comes back and he's at his best, we're in for a massive fighter. And just one part as well, the Ngannou fight where he took Cyril Gane down a few times, he kind of caught Cyril unawares in that fight, because we all expected it to be a fucking boxing match, kickboxing match, and then Gane, NCAA Ngannou, I was calling him after that. He will be expecting Jon Jones to try to take him down. Even if he doesn't, he will be prepared for it. And I think it leads to a different sort of fight. Now, will he be able to stop it if he tries? Who knows? That's a different question. But I don't think he'll be caught unawares in this fight and will fight to not be taken down. So it's going to be a little bit tougher on Jon Jones, even though Jones is a better wrestler. So, look, if he can get it going and he does get Gane down over and over, he will probably more than likely win the fight. But I want to see this as a technical striking matchup, because that's, to me, look, I've said it before, it's the fight I want to see more than any other fight in MMA. It's this one. This is it. This is for me. When when all is said and done, this is the one you want to be standing there at fucking 6 o'clock in the morning waiting on for the two of them to get into the cage. It's just a fucking
it's a massive, massive, massive fight, and I absolutely can't wait for it. So yeah, we will look forward to that. One last thing before we go, Graeme, and I usually wouldn't bring this up because we don't talk about this goon, but he signed with PFL now, and it's Jake Paul, and he lost to Tommy Fury in a boxing bout on Sunday night. I don't know if you watched. Did you watch it, Graeme? Did you see it?
Yeah, I actually did. I wasn't planning on watching it, but a friend of mine messaged asking for a stream, and I got a stream for him and just kind of threw it on in the background, and ended up taking ages, but ended up watching it, and it was Jake Paul was extremely sloppy,
very bad.
I don't know. The commentator, I was actually laughing my head off at the commentators.
Ridiculous.
Trying to pretend like this was some kind of
like it
was just funny to me, the whole thing. And they were interviewing Logan Paul.
That was one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
And your man was like, "What did he?
I love you, bro."
What did he say to your brother before he went out there? And he's like, "Oh, you can do it, bro. I believe in you. I love you, bro." And your man's like, "I love you too." Like, what?
I literally
laughing my head off.
Pissed myself laughing. It was so fucking funny. What was that? As a Radio Raheem or something? He kept signing off by saying, "I'm Radio Raheem" or something like that. Awful.
Terrible.
Yeah, the whole production around it and all was just awful.
They cut back to like Carl Frost. He's just like, "Oh my god, I gotta pretend like this wasn't trash." Like,
did he?
You can see him struggling to like fucking.
So you were watching. So I flew to Canada and I watched it on Fight TV for mine, and it was the American commentators, and they acted like this was fucking Gennady Golovkin versus Canelo or something. They acted like it was one of the best boxing matches ever seen. We have to get the rematch. This was so good. They showed what boxing is all about.
They were basically like on the BT. They were basically like, should Tommy Fury go try to win like an area title, or should he like get loads of money to like KSI? And Carl Frost is like, oh, well, like if they offered me $500,000 to fight KSI, like when I was instead of fighting for like 10 grand to fight an area title, like you know, it's a hard hard choice. It was horrendous. Like Tommy Fury like was, as his father described him, a novice boxer, which I thought it was, and he is like a novice boxer as well. But for your father to say that was funny, and like he destroyed him. Like he won 6 rounds to 2, and there was points taken away and stuff. And Jake knocked him down. To be fair, he didn't knock him down. I don't know what Tommy was trying to do there.
Oh fuck you!
I think because Jake swung so wildly and missed so madly, he just kind of stood there going, "What the fuck?" And then he got hit with the jab. As he was kind of like, I don't know what he was trying to do, but it was a very, very poor standard. I don't know how boxing scored or whatever. I don't know the criteria even, but. I just thought Jake looked terrible. He looked really tired and desperate really early, and he was holding on, and the ref was just a disgrace. He like, it was like a tap to the back of the head, and he took like a point, and then there was like Jake Paul kept grappling, and then he took a point from Tommy Fury for like doing a tiny bit of grappling back. It was just like, oh my god, what's going on
Jake looked
here?
like he was going to vomit when he was walking out as well. I've never seen anyone in my life look as nervous walking out the fight. But anyway, I actually don't care about the fight. What I do care about is he signed with PFL, and he's on about fucking fighting Nate Diaz in PFL and in both boxing and boxing one fight and in MMA and the other fight and all this. Like, I saw Ariel say, kind of tweeting last night that fight is dead now, and I don't know what PFL are going to do with him. Like he's a busted flush in terms of a draw. Saw Dana White talking about it yesterday.
Split decision. He knocked him down. If it was 12 rounds, he had him.
How was that a fucking split decision? He just decimated him. Like, it was easy for Tommy Fury. But anyway,
Tommy Fury resurrected himself in the canvas like the Undertaker.
Like his brother, yeah. But you see, Dana White was saying that he made a great point actually, because he was saying Steven Espinosa would never have let Jake Paul go if he was making money for him, which is like, if Dana White knows anything, it's how to fucking make money off of fighters. So I would think he's actually right on that one.
Well, it depends how much the old Saudi Arabia were offering.
Well, that's it. But like, why would PFL do that with him? Like, why would PFL, and now PFL are fucking hemorrhaging money all over the place as well by the looks of it, but like, why would they do that with Jake Paul? What are they going to do? Like, they do him versus Nathan Diaz, and that's just going to bomb, like, or they're gonna, and it mightn't even bomb, but they're just gonna put a load of money into it and not make it back. And I don't know what's gonna happen.
I'd say it would do really well on a legal stream, like.
Yeah, very well. But what's Nathan gonna do now? Like, if that fight doesn't happen, where's he gonna go? Like, I don't think the UFC will want him back. Where the fuck is he? Like, he could end up fighting Anthony Pettis in PFL in that pay-per-view show they've coming up, or could he end up in fucking Bellator or somewhere and retired? I don't know what he's gonna do. Like, this is an absolute fucking abomination for Nathan Diaz. It's not a great night for him. And like this whole look, as a draw, Jake Paul was over as a busted flush in his last couple of bouts. I think this one probably did a little bit better because Tommy Fury has like the Love Island thing behind him as well. But then Tommy just beat him, and Tommy's like, according to his own family, a fucking average boxer. It's just. This is just the end of it. Like I wouldn't be so like Jake Paul is no idiot as well. He's a prick and all of that, but he is a smart young lad. Make no mistake about that. I think he's going to retire. Like I would be surprised if I saw him boxing again because he knows now he's not going to be good enough. He's just going to find something else and move on. Like is he going to fight in MMA? Like and anyone we listen.
I don't know, man. Fighters like boxers are probably similar to fighters. They probably have this like, you know, ridiculous belief in their ability.
He has other options
beyond what they are, and he probably has a lot of people around him that will, you know, want to keep the
everyone wants to go on. That's what I was thinking with the commentators last night and all. They're like, oh, they're just trying to fucking he's probably getting paid 3 times as much to do a Jake Paul fight than anything else. They want to keep this fucking train of flowing, but like I don't think he's that stupid. I really don't. And like if you went in there an MMA fight, he's gonna get lashed out of it. Like I talked to Will Fleury about it. They're around the same way, and imagine what he'd do to him. Like just fucking destroy him. Like he's just gonna get. He's
what
never
about
gonna
that
fight
lad
anyone.
they found on the street that had a gym fight with CM Punk in that documentary?
Put him in there against CM Punk.
Unnamed lad from the street. Remember?
Yeah, CM Punk is available now. I think isn't he? Or possibly available. Put him in there against CM Punk.
Was he like 10-time champion of the world or something? Come on, make it happen.
The cult of personality.
Yeah, I don't really care about any of it anyway.
No, I don't either. Fuck him. But like the only thing I do, this whole PFL thing, it's just I wonder what happens. I literally wouldn't have brought it up only for the PFL part of it. So and the Nathan Diaz.
He should have just done the Diaz boxing match first. Would have been, you know, a fight that he could have lost, and it would have been like, well, it's Nate Diaz, like, you know, good boxer, and then he could have done the Fury one afterwards.
Yeah, interesting.
But like whatever, like who cares?
Who cares? Who gives a fuck? Yeah,
like it was an appalling standard. I saw some people on Twitter being like, "Oh, that was a great fight." I was like, that was absolutely not in any way.
It was atrocious. It was really atrocious. But yeah, we will leave it there. This might be our longest podcast since the fucking McGahan days, nearly coming up on 2 hours here. So I hope everyone enjoyed it. There was KSW as well last week. Phil the Freeze retained his title. Very, very good. There's PFL Challenger Series next week, Cage Warriors next week as well. I know, is Nathan Kelly on next week or is he the week after? He is next week. Oh, Nathan Kelly's fighting next week as well, Graeme. He's fighting Zachary Hicks in the Challenger Series. That's on the 3rd of March, so in 4 or 5 days from now as well. So best of luck to Nathan and that. He's been on a great run, looked really, really good in his last few fights. You know, was obviously, he had one in PFL, but he fought in Centurion before that, fought in one fight in Bellator and won a good few fights over in Clan Wars there after losing the first 2 fights in his career. So big shout out to Nathan Kelly as well, and best of luck to him in over in the Challenger Series in PFL. So yeah, we will leave it at that. Thank you to everyone for listening. Thanks for all the support this week. It's been absolutely fucking massive. Our YouTube got demonetized as well, so all the views were for fucking nothing in the end. But if you want to support us, we're on Patreon, patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast. There will be loads of stuff out this week and every week. You can still subscribe to our YouTube. You can follow Graeme at SevereMMA pod here. And if you're listening to this, don't be a fucking freeloader. Click subscribe. It's free. It's free. Subscribe, Spotify, iTunes, Podcast Republic, YouTube, the whole lot of that. Click subscribe. Let us know. Tweet it out. Tweet out the podcast as well. Tell people you're listening. Let us know what part is your favourite. Tweet Graeme, tweet me at SeanGMBA. Put up on Facebook, Instagram. Tag us in your stories. We'll share it at SevereMMA. What is it? SevereMMA.com. Let them know. Let them know. Right, as I said as well, thanks everyone we met all week. A lot of great fans around the place. You were fucking legends. I appreciate the support. I know Graeme does too. Andy did an absolutely fantastic job all week. Shout out to him. Shout out to Ian, Harry, and all the boys from at home as well who did an outstanding job. Ian working like a Trojan as always at home to get everything posted for everyone out there as well. So a great team effort, and Spencer and Jakey and the whole lot as well. So fair play to everyone in the SevereMMA team and for everyone at home supporting us too. Graeme, give us your quote of the week before we go.
There were bad times on Magdalen Street. They took you away in a police car. Inspector, don't you know? Don't you care? Don't you know about love?
We'll see you next Tuesday, or probably Sunday, hopefully this week.